Welcome to another episode of Wayne's World Garage. Today, we're going to find out if the MA17-19 mortar rounds are actually going to explode. Just kidding. These are welding rods, but the guy stored the welding rods inside of these mortar tubes. They're for M1 and M29 mortars, by the way, if you ever need to buy any mortar rounds. It's a great way to store them, actually. It keeps them dry. Keeping these things dry is important. Keeping the humidity out of them is important. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done any welding before, but just a couple of quick things here. This is stick welding. So basically there's no gas associated with it. You take the stick, you connect it to here, it sparks, it arcs, and it gets going. We use what they call positive EN, DC positive. So actually the positive is connected to the ground on this, okay? The other is DC EN, I think is what they call it, where it's negative. But you want positive, and that way the metal goes from the rod to the metal you're doing. And just a quick background here. I'm not a professional welder. I'm not an expert welder. I have learned to weld a long time ago from a guy named Ernie Huber. And I was 25 years old. My wife bought me a Lincoln Buzz box. They're the ones that look like little tombstones, AC/DC, 225 amps. It was a great welder. I used it for many years. Built lots of stuff with it. And back then, for $100, you get a truckload full of steel. Today, these two pieces of steel you got here cost you 40 bucks. Sorry guys, that's just the way it goes. But that's the story. But Mr. Huber, great guy. I took classes at the community college. They were very inexpensive. For me, it was easy because the classes were at Fort Meade, Maryland. And guess where Wayno was? Fort Meade, Maryland. And we take the classes, and after a bunch of classes, all we do is run bead, run bead, run beads. It's kind of boring, actually. But the point was, you got to get used to starting the arc and running beads. Okay. After the class, second class, Mr. Huber started telling a long story. And I'm listening there, and this is one it's worth listening to. Kind of relates to these mortars. Huber, as it turns out, was a Vietnam vet. And this was in the 80s, early 80s, so he was probably out of Vietnam 5 or 10 years maybe at the most. And he says, yeah, well, I was a helicopter pilot. And my ears perked up because I like helicopters. And it turns out Huber, okay, flew slicks. Slicks are UH-1s, and they were used for medevac. That's what they got the people who got injured off the battlefield with. And that's pretty cool, I was thinking. Towards the end of the day, Huber says, yep, and I got shot down 3 times. Let me tell you what, that got my attention. So he got shot down 3 times, and he said, but the good news is, I only lost one of my co-pilots. These guys were real men back then. Imagine that. Back to welding. For stick welding, it's a kind of a nasty job, so get yourself some big heavy gloves if you're ever going to do it. You need to wear this thing on your head because if you're a little bit bald, all the sparks fly and hit you in the head. And you also need to get something leather to keep the sparks off of your skin. It's going to be 95, 98 degrees out here yesterday. It was 96, so it's going to be hot. One of the things to do whenever you learn how to weld or do any welding, make sure you get comfortable. If you're not comfortable, you can't be seeing what you're doing, it ain't going to work right. The other thing you're going to need is a little hammer and a wire brush, which I don't have handy. So it used to happen all the time. Young kids say, hey, I want you to teach me how to weld. I want to be a welder. Welders can make a lot of money, that's for sure. But you've got to get the skills. And skills to weld are not automatic. And it's hot work. And that's an understatement. All right, so let's see. Got my head on. Got my gloves on. Got my welding rods ready. A couple lines here. Again, I don't know whether this thing's going to work. And what current should I set this thing at? I'm at about 130 amps. That's too much for this little rod. I'm going to put it down to about 80. Why do I know that? Ready for some action? I'm going to belt my little camera here. That'll cost me 200 bucks for videos people don't watch. It's already getting hot out here. Hope this works. Remember, this welder is supposed to run on 460 volts. 220? All right, let's see. Now, real welders just go like that and things down, but I can't do that very well. And there you go. So I like to hold the thing here when I'm doing this. So, all right, this is my first weld. Not very good. Well, the first thing is it didn't blow up, so I think that's probably a positive thing. So, and we're using, these are small rods. These are 32nd of an inch. I'm going to bump it up a little bit to a little bit bigger rods in a second. The metal I'm using is probably 3/16 of an inch. The slag comes right off. It's actually, all right, it looks pretty good. Let me do a couple more welds here, and then I'll move the camera, get you a little bit closer. It makes some noise. Now, if you look at that bead now, it looks pretty rough. Actually, not bad looking. Not bad looking for not having stick welded in a long time. Last time I welded, I did some hard surfacing, which isn't exactly welding. These are 7018 rods, much thicker rods. And we're gonna have to turn the current up some. There we go. Let's try about 130. Let's see how this does. All right, makes noise. Yeah. Now you know why I like the 7018 rods. That's actually a nice bead here. Whew. All right. Well, let's do a couple practice runs and see what happens here. And it looks like the temperature's about right. The heat's about right. It's making noises. Didn't blow up though. I think it's working all right. There's some okay beads. Other than being hot up here. Oh my God, this is why I'm doing it now though, because this won't take too long. All right. Damn, pretty slick, huh? I think I'll run a couple more of these and I'll try and put a piece of metal down. Not bad. Alrighty. So now, I got this other piece of metal here. I should try and weld this thing to it. That'll be a fun project. I think I would suggest that this welder does work. Which is, how cool is that? But it's getting hot out here already, trust me. I'm set to about 130 amps DC, by the way. And it's getting warm out here. So I'm just gonna tack this guy before we get going, because if you don't tack it first, it'll be a catastrophe. So I've got a nice tack down here. Let's run a bead or two and see what this guy looks like, how it does. Stand by. That's about it, because it's getting hot out here. All right, guys. Well, I guess the 460 volt Miller welder actually runs on 230 or 240 volts. I think I got 243, 246 volts. Regardless, it works fine. So the assessment that there were some issues the way it was wired up just didn't add up right. The guy didn't have 460 volts in his house, single phase. I've never heard of that. And a lot of your comments, neither of you. So clearly, let's try it out on 230, especially since the fan, it says 230 volts right on it, and it goes right to the input, the two hot leads, and it works just fine. just some pretty nice welds. So let's check out these welds. Now remember, I used to stick weld when I was young, 40 years ago. I do MIG and TIG now. I haven't stick welded in a long time. But I hate to say it, it's kind of like riding a bike, and it quickly comes back. The one thing, if you're ever doing stick welding, do it in a well-ventilated area. OMG, let me tell you what, there's dust, the smoke, the debris that's flying in the air is toxic, it's horrible, and you don't want to be breathing that stuff. So how do these welds look anyway? Let's go check them out. You know, considering I haven't welded in forever, the first couple were pretty bad, but then they got okay, I think. I don't know, what do you guys think? And then let me see the other side. The other side might be better. All right, well here's the holy grail of welding testing. So I tried to weld a little bead on this thing. It actually did pretty well considering I haven't done it in, like I said, probably 20, 30 years, probably 30 years I got rid of this thing. Welding is a hot job. When you're outside, it's hot, but you got to do it outside, especially with this stuff. A lot of smoke and stuff which will probably cause you cancer and give you bad things. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. 460 volt welder worked just perfectly well on 230 volts. It's clearly not 460. Somebody changed it, I don't know who. Thanks to Miller in Appleton, Wisconsin. The guy hooked me up, told me the voltages and stuff like that so I could test it. And he was right, it worked out perfectly well. Although everybody in the interweb says, it'll never work, it'll never work. I think these welds proved it wrong, or at least somebody did something to this thing. It works like a champ. Please subscribe, take care guys, and have a good day. See ya.